Hello, Aurora lovers. This is DaleBoan from DaleBoanImaging, and this is Aurora Hunting 101. This is episode 31. Is there a better KP? If you watch some of my other videos, you may have noticed I'm not a big fan of KP. In fact, when I recorded the video on KP the first time, it was so negative that I rewrote it and re-recorded it. It's still kind of negative, but not without some justification. In my mind, KP is pretty old and a little clumsy, and it has a number of issues. Probably most important for Aurora hunting is it's based on a maximum value for a 3-hour period. And in a 3-hour period, the Aurora can appear and disappear quite easily. And it'd be nice if KP updated more frequently than it does. And the German Research Center for Geosciences, the GFZ, they were the originators of KP to start with. K has been around for a very long time. There are K data sets going back around 150 years. But the idea of trying to come up with a planetary average, the KP, P and KP is for planetary, actually planetary in German. So K and KP is German for counter number. And they're the originators of KP. So one of their projects is to come up with a somewhat better KP, at least one that updates a bit more frequently. So let's take a look at that. KP gets used in a number of contexts. In this context, I'm talking about the current KP. It's also used for forecasts, in which case they're trying to forecast what the KP value will be at some time in the future. I'm not certain there's a way of getting around that. I guess they could try and do it on a shorter time scale, but the 3 hours is integral to the definition of KP, so there's not a lot they can do about that. And then KP, like the current KP value, the current measured KP value, which is actually an estimate if you see it in an app, because it takes a while to actually tabulate all the data and calculate the value. That's done hours or days later usually. But the real-time one is what we're talking about. And as I said, the biggest problem is it is a maximum for a 3-hour period, and the values can change quite a bit in 3 hours. And what we would like is something a little more real time. And to go back to that 3-hour maximum, that's okay if the KP is rising, because, every half hour it goes up a little bit more. You're going to see that in the current KP value. If it's declining, that highest value is going to be at the start of that 3-hour period. In an hour or 2 hour and 3 hours later, it might be quite a bit lower, and you're not going to see that KP value change until that 3-hour period ends, because it's the maximum value for that period. And that's, one of the reasons why that 3-hour period is problematic. So what GFZ did was come up with a shorter term one called HP30. And they've been playing around with this for at least 3 years now, 2-3 years now. There's an AP30 and an AP60, which are mapped to the A values. They're related to KP, but they're more numerical measured value as opposed to the index category number that we use for KP. So what they have is HP30 and HP60. And combined, they're called HPO. Is this the one I want? Yeah, so 30 is every 30 minutes they basically calculate a new value, or every 60 minutes. And you can see, so every 30 minutes you're going to get 6 of these in a 3-hour period, right? So you can see there's, a fair amount of fluctuation. Is it really important? Maybe. If you have jumps down like that instead of a jump up, that might be important. So they're certainly trying to see, trying to improve it. I find it useful to go in and look at this to see if we're caught in that instance of a declining KP value. So this will tell me, right? So at 1800 hours, which will be the start of KP period, you can see that it actually has been declining, but KP would be stuck at 7, right? But using the 30-minute ones, we can see that it's not uniformly declining, but on average it's declining down. It's now down to closer to KP5 instead of the KP7 that is going to be reported, or it'll be HPA 35, value of 5 instead of KP7, which gives us a better idea of what's going on with the Aurora and in general. And as I've also said, the KP isn't really an Aurora measurement. It's a measurement of the disturbance in the Earth's magnetic field caused by the solar wind. Solar wind causes both Aurora and the disturbances, so they're correlated, but they don't always match. The biggest difference is, well, BZ affects both of them, but BZ really affects the Aurora. And they do have a 60-minute version, but why would you have that when you have a 30-minute version? And then they're also showing KP here. See how you don't have the, zoom out, you see how much less resolution you have there. Is it better? Like I say, I find it better to do a quick check and see if the KP is declining or not. Because 9 p.m. is a good time to think about going out, and I want to know if they're 10 o'clock it's starting to show a decline or not. And I'm not going to see the next update from 9 p.m. until midnight. GFZ has been around for a long time. Like I say, they are the ones that actually defined, or scientists that was working there defined KP, if I remember correctly. They do have their KP graph as well. That is the world standard for the KP. I think NOAA does their own, and it can differ slightly because they use different measurement stations. And they do longer term forecasts as well. They've got KP5 and then they're showing it dropping off. I don't know of any app that shows this information, but there might be. So it's kind of interesting to poke around at their website. They do their own set of measurements similar to NOAA. GFZ has taken a step towards trying to come up with a more real-time version of KP, the HP 30 in this case. And I think that's an important step, and it is a bit useful. Like I said, in my mind, it's most useful for the periods when KP might be declining, or the geomagnetic activity might be declining, and it won't show up in the KP until the next 3-hour period until the current 3-hour period has ended. And that's important for Aurora hunting. Sometimes I will make a decision not to go if I can see that things are declining like that. And you could also look at it to see if there was just a temporary glitch that spiked high for a very short period and then drop back down. That does happen sometimes as well. And then that maximum will get locked in for that 3-hour period. So I think it is worth doing a quick check. It's certainly not going to solve all the problems. My preferred alternate to KP is to use HPI, the hemispheric power. That's represented on the NOAA 30-minute Aurora forecast map. So it's a calculated value. The HPI, the hemispheric power, is calculated and used to predict the visibility of the aurora around the poles. I use that over KP all the time. I don't recommend using KP at night, or if you're going to use KP, at least use KP and BZ. But this is useful as well to take a look and see if there's a lot of fluctuations or a decline in KP. That'll show up in the HB30 values. With that, please check out episode 32, How Do Seasons Affect the Moon? We know that the seasons affect the sun. It goes up higher and lower through the seasons, but it also affects the moon, and it affects the moon in a little more complicated way. So let's take a look at that. And with that, I'm wishing you clear skies and happy hunting.